Keir Starmer humiliated by Nigel Farage and turned into a laughingstock in front of hundreds at Prime Minister's questions. The sentence alone almost defies belief. Yet today, it became a brutal, undeniable reality played out in the most public arena of British politics. The man who once branded himself as the serious alternative, the unflappable grown-up in the room, the prosecutor of prime ministers, found himself on the receiving end of a rhetorical demolition that left him visibly rattled and reduced to a punchline. And the architect of his downfall? None other than Nigel Farage, the consummate showman, the insurgent thorn in the side of the establishment, the man Starmer has spent years dismissing as a relic of a bygone populist wave. Today, Farage returned to Westminster with one mission: to humiliate the Labour leader and expose, for all to see, the fragility behind the mask of composure that Starmer wears like armor. It was a masterclass in political theater, but it was also something more. It was a moment of reckoning, a moment that revealed how little steel lies beneath Starmer's carefully constructed image, a moment that may very well define his leadership in the eyes of the public. From the moment Farage rose to speak, the atmosphere in the chamber changed. You could feel it. The murmur of MPs faded to silence. All eyes locked on the man who has, time and again, proven his ability to cut through the noise and strike at the heart of Britain's political elite. And Farage wasted no time. With his trademark grin and the confidence of a man who has nothing to lose, he launched into his attack, and Starmer never saw it coming. It began with a question, framed innocently enough, about Labour's stance on immigration. But Farage's words were knives, each one sharper than the last, cutting deep into the contradictions and hypocrisies of Starmer's record. He invoked Labour's promises of controlled borders. He cited the surge of small boats crossing the channel. He painted a vivid picture of working-class communities up and down the country, left to fend for themselves as the party that once spoke for them now lectures them about compassion and tolerance from a safe distance. And then, with the precision of a seasoned brawler, Farage turned it personal. He called out Starmer's record as Director of Public Prosecutions, accusing him of a culture of weakness, of always choosing the path of least resistance, of failing to stand up when it really mattered. And in that moment, the entire chamber erupted, not with applause for Starmer, but with laughter at his expense, because Starmer had no answer. Here was the man who prides himself on his legal mind, the man who built his reputation on cross-examining. The powerful, suddenly fumbling for words, visibly shaken, his usual steely demeanor cracking under the weight of Farage's assault. He tried to laugh it off. He tried to pivot back to his talking points. But the damage was done. The laughter rolled through the chamber, echoing louder than any words Starmer could muster. And Farage, sensing blood in the water, pressed on. He reminded the room, and the nation, that Starmer was the architect of Labour's purge of its own members, the man who promised party unity and delivered division. He reminded them that Starmer once championed a second referendum, then denied it when convenient, then buried it when it became politically toxic. He reminded them that Starmer has made a career of sitting on the fence, of saying just enough to keep his options open, but never enough to actually lead. By the time Farage finished, Starmer was no longer standing on the moral high ground. He was standing in the rubble of his own credibility. And make no mistake, the damage from today's humiliation will not be confined to that chamber. Because this was not just a debate. This was a spectacle, broadcast live, clipped and shared across social media, watched by millions of voters who have been quietly asking themselves for months, does this man have what it takes? And today, many of them got their answer. What Farage exposed is what many of Starmer's critics, inside and outside his party, have long known. That beneath the polish, beneath the rehearsed lines and the calculated image, Keir Starmer is not a fighter. He is not a leader who commands the loyalty of his base or the respect of his opponents. He is a man who has spent his entire career playing it safe, hedging his bets, avoiding risk at all costs. But politics punishes caution. Leadership punishes timidity. And today, Keir Starmer paid the price, because Nigel Farage does not play by the rules of Westminster. He does not respect the decorum that Starmer clings to like a lifeline. Farage thrives in chaos. He thrives in conflict. And he has an instinct for weakness, an instinct that Starmer, with his lawyerly habits and his fear of saying the wrong thing, was utterly unprepared for. This was more than a clash of personalities. It was a clash of philosophies. Farage embodies a politics that is unapologetic, even reckless at times, but clear and visceral. Starmer embodies a politics that is cautious, managerial, bloodless. And when those two collided today, it was obvious which one connected with the public and which one wilted under the glare. And perhaps the most devastating part of all is this. Starmer's humiliation was not just about what Farage said. It was about what he didn't say and what Starmer couldn't say in return. Because Starmer had no vision to defend, no principle to rally behind, no story to tell that could drown out the laughter, it's easy to mock Farage as a showman, to dismiss him as a provocateur. But today he did what opposition politicians are supposed to do. He forced a reckoning. He forced the leader of the Labour Party to answer for the gap between his words and his actions. And Starmer failed that test. And so here we are. Keir Starmer, the man who promised to restore dignity and seriousness to British politics, reduced to a punchline by the very man he thought he could ignore. A leader who once stood in Parliament and told Boris Johnson he was not fit to lead now finds himself asking whether the public believes he is. Because politics is not just about policy. It is about presence. It is about the ability to command a room, to stand your ground, to take the blows and hit back harder. It is about the ability to connect, to inspire, to convince people that you believe in something bigger than yourself. And today, in the most important arena in British politics, Keir Starmer showed he cannot do any of those things. The laughter that rang through the chamber today was more than the sound of a man embarrassed. It was the sound of a man exposed. Exposed as cautious when he needed to be bold. Exposed as brittle when he needed to be strong. Exposed as hollow when he needed to be full of conviction. And once that impression is made, it is very hard to unmake. The question now is what comes next. How does a leader recover from being humiliated so completely, so publicly? How does a man rebuild his authority when he has just shown the country how easily it can be stripped away? How does he convince the voters and his own party that he can stand up to the pressures of number 10 when he cannot even stand up to Nigel Farage? These are the questions Keir Starmer must now answer. And he will not find the answers in the focus groups. He will not find them in the polling tables. He will not find them in the endless calculations of what is safe, what is acceptable, what will offend the fewest people. He will only find them if he decides, finally, to take a stand. Because Britain is tired of leaders who hide behind caution. Britain is tired of politicians who believe the path to power lies in never saying what they really think. Britain is tired of men like Keir Starmer, who mistake silence for strategy and who think voters cannot see through the façade. Today, Nigel Farage tore that façade down, and now Keir Starmer has a choice. He can continue to play it safe and watch his credibility bleed away day by day. Or he can finally decide what he stands for and have the courage to fight for it, no matter the cost. Because leadership is not about avoiding humiliation. It is about rising from it stronger. It is about proving to the people who doubt you that you are more than the sum of your mistakes. But today, Keir Starmer was humiliated, and Britain saw it, and they will not forget.